Good afternoon, fellow patriots. This is Matt Shea, and welcome to Patriot Radio, broadcasting live from deep inside the heart of the future Liberty State. Sponsored once again by On Fire Ministries, in the legacy of Dr. Stan Monteith, bringing you the story behind the story and the news behind the news, where it's not about right or left, it's about right and wrong. It's about our hope not being in man, but in Jesus Christ. About not ending in prayer, but moving to action. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Father, deliver us from the evil one.
Welcome to Patriot Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, fellow patriots. Welcome back to another Gen Z episode with me, Megan, asking the questions to Pastor Matt Shea to explain to all of you some things, hopefully in more understandable terms. Pastor Matt, it's great to be back with you in the studio.
It's great to be back.
It is.
It's really, it's been really good to go through all of these different topics and bring some clarity to Gen Z. And, you know, the positive response that we've received has been pretty amazing.
Yeah. I've actually had quite a few people message me and say that they've become fans of the show.
Yeah.
But the goal of today's episode is going to be, we're going to dumb it down even farther. We're going to take it base level.
What does that mean?
I don't want to use the word dumb, but we're going to break things down even farther than we normally break it down, because I feel like we are missing some things in there. You and I, we kind of get in a banter, and then we might not make it all the way down to the level where some people might need it to understand what's going on.
Okay.
So, first thing we're going to be talking about is that Texas has just declared CAIR, C-A-I-R, and the Muslim Brotherhood foreign terror groups.
And transnational, I'm reading off of, it's interesting because I was actually just talking with somebody about this. I'm reading off of the actual proclamation here. And it's designated the Muslim Brotherhood and CAIR as a foreign terrorist and transnational criminal organization. So it's both.
What does transnational criminal organization mean?
Typically meaning a cartel. That's what we would think about it in simple terms. But it's any organization or group of people that is perpetrating crimes in multiple countries and across national boundaries. Here, he designated it under the Texas Penal Code and the Texas Property Code. So under the Texas Criminal Code and under the Texas Property Code. That's really critical because under the Property Code, the Muslim Brotherhood and the Council on American Islamic Relations cannot then purchase land, but that means any land they do have could be seized. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Right.
But what's, I think, really important is to give the background here of why he did this. This isn't him just being a meanie. But in Texas, actually, back in 2008, there was the largest terror financing trial ever successfully prosecuted in U.S. history.
The Holy Land
Foundation trial. And so in that trial, they went after the financing because the financing exposed all of the arms and all of the organizations that were associated with essentially Hamas in the United States of America. And what it showed is that the Council on American Islamic Relations was an unindicted co-conspirator in this terror financing trial. In other words, they were not prosecuted, but the evidence showed that they were connected. That went up on appeal and was upheld on appeal. And so this is the basis for what he is doing right here. The Muslim Brotherhood was started in 1928 by a guy named Hassan al-Banna. Hassan al-Banna started the Muslim Brotherhood to restart the caliphate, which had been abolished in 1924.
What is the caliphate?
So all Muslims profess that they will see Islam take over the entire world under one group of people, and that Islam will rule the world. So they see the world split into two pieces, the world of Islam and the world at war. The world at war is where they're still fighting to establish Islamic dominance over that area of the world. This is not just some sort of like fringe conspiracy theory. This is what they say in their own documents.
Right.
And so I would challenge everybody out there, if they want to follow up on this, they can read the foremost legal book on Sunni Islam, which is called The Reliance of the Traveler.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important to get the full edition of it,
Right.
because some editions leave out the last pieces, which might be some more controversial pieces. So
Yeah.
with that said, the Muslim Brotherhood establishing the caliphate. So the caliphate was the Islamic Empire, which was ruled by the Ottomans out of Turkey, out of Istanbul, Turkey. And its goal was to take over the entire world. So when the caliphate is reestablished, that means instant war all across the world at one time. So the Muslim Brotherhood connected, its goal to reestablish the caliphate, Islam's goal to dominate the entire world and every religion and every person in it.
Yeah, and I think a big question that people are going to be having about what just happened in Texas is what he did legal? Like, can he do that in just the state?
Absolutely, because it was proven in court that Kerr was an unindicted co-conspirator, okay, and that this was a terror financing trial. In Islam, there is and this is a very loose comparison, it is like a tithe to a church, but it's actually called zakat. And zakat, part of zakat, you have to give to jihad. Well, you'll hear a lot of people out there who are either intentionally ignorant or actually ignorant try to define jihad as all these kind of different things, peaceful struggle and all this kind of stuff. That's not what it means. We go to their law book, The Reliance of the Traveler, and jihad in their law book is, quote, warfare against non-Muslims, end quote. So that means warfare against Christians and Jews.
Right.
And that is why we have all the things happening in the Middle East. So we have happening in the Middle East.
It's so interesting. I saw a video of a girl having a conversation with someone on a college campus. They had their, Islamic college, trying to get people to join Islam, explain, take away the stigma. She was trying to say that the definition of Islam means religion of peace. And the guy she was talking to said, no, it actually means submission to Allah. And she's like,
correct.
No, it means religion of peace. She goes, Salam, Islam. And he said, no, Salam means peace be with you in a different language. But your word actually means submission to Allah. And it's so interesting how, people who are Islamic that live in the United States are trying to do this thing where they make us think it's a religion of peace. Which brings me to Zoran Mamdani and everything that's happening in New York.
Well, could we back up to this? Because I think it's going to be important.
Yeah.
This proclamation, because in this proclamation is some history that, again, a lot of people don't understand. And the first is that Hamas, which was formed in 1987 as the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood,
Oh, good.
was designated by the United States government as a foreign terrorist organization. And that's why no one should be pro-Hamas. And also, the Muslim Brotherhood was infiltrated by the Soviet KGB as a matter of historic fact. You can read this in the book Disinformation by General Mihai Pachipa, who was the highest ranking Soviet general to defect to the United States of America.
I really don't think anybody knows what they're protesting for anymore.
I don't think so either. And so you read the proclamation, and it actually gives a very clear history. And it says this, that the Muslim Brotherhood was plotting an armed insurrection in Egypt under this one guy, but it says, has stated that the organization's primary goal is to establish Islam's mastership of the world and a total reform of all domains of life by resurrecting an Islamic state. So the Islamic state then is defined, or a caliphate.
That's what they said they want to do in Texas.
Yeah, this is the actual proclamation from Texas. I'm reading from it right now. Empowered to forcibly impose Sharia law
Forcibly.
worldwide. So
Forcibly.
you can't talk about any of these things without understanding that their goal is total domination of the world. Their goal is to reestablish the caliphate, and their goal is to forcibly impose Sharia law. Now, they will say there's no such thing as Sharia law. It's Allah's divine law. For the sake of discussion, we're going to call it Sharia law worldwide.
I really would like to get a document or like a copy of actual Sharia law. What are the rules? What are the regulations from their text? Because when I look it up on the internet, I feel like it's very vague.
So we actually do have a document that shows us what Sharia law is. So it has taqiyya in there. There's 3 permissible times you can lie, war business, when you're talking to your wife.
That's my
There's
favorite
those kind of things. That is all written. We know what the definitions are. You can go read it for yourself. It is the authoritative translation from Arabic to English.
What's it called?
The Reliance of the Traveler that I just mentioned.
So I think everybody needs to go read this. I think a lot of women need to read this. I think a lot of young people need to read this. We need to be aware of what it actually says, because there's a lot of things happening in the United States right now. I mean, there's actually quite a few people in power in the United States that are practicing Muslims.
Yeah, and if you don't understand Islam and the way that the writings happened and are interconnected and what that means for Sharia, then you miss a lot of things. A lot of people will just focus on the Quran, but there's actually so much more than the Quran. There's the Sunnah, which included the Hadiths and the Sirah, the authoritative biography of Muhammad. The Hadiths, which were compiled, these were eyewitness accounts, many of which actually were false and were thrown out by the compilers. Bukhari and Muslim, these are literally the 2 guys that compiled these. These hadiths were eyewitness statements of Muhammad's life. So you can read things like, when I say something like Muhammad married a 6-year-old girl and consummated when she was 9, you can go read in the hadiths the eyewitness account from Aisha, the girl, about what happened to her. You can go read that for yourself. This is not something that is being pulled out of thin air or maybe misinterpreted. This is there. And in the Reliance of the Traveler, we know the definitions, the legal definitions, and the permissible behavior for people under Sharia. And so you can read it for yourself, stop listening to people who think they know but have never actually read it, and get an idea of why Texas is doing this right now, because this is stopping an attempt to overthrow the United States of America, because Sharia law has to dominate over every other law. That means if somebody raises their right hand during an immigration or naturalization proceeding and says that they swear allegiance to the Constitution of the United States, and yet they practice Sharia, they are lying, because Sharia law has to win out. So in other words, you cannot be a Sharia adherent Muslim and be a U.S. citizen as a matter of law if you're reading the actual language in the naturalization paperwork, because you won't believe in the Constitution being the supreme law of the land. That's it. It's that simple.
It's actually scary how many people are being deceived in the United States about Islam, how many young people are being deceived. And I just have a question for, what do you say to people who say that this is just you being Islamophobic? I know personally I have received many messages about...
Well, I don't fear Islam at all.
Well, I've received many messages about people saying that this is what we do, what we talk about is very divisive, it's dangerous, we have false rhetoric.
No, what's dangerous is enslaving women around the world, justifying rape, and justifying terrorism. That's what's dangerous. And so to the people out there right now that are trying to say this nonsense, my point with this is very simple. Islamophobia is a made-up word. It was part of these organizations listed as unindicted co-conspirators in the largest terror financing trial ever successfully prosecuted in U.S. history, part of their information campaign against Christians in the United States, and really against useful, what Lenin called useful idiots, or people that were just kind of clueless about what was going on. This is their campaign against them. What's dangerous is people that are trying to bring in a way of life, that are lying in their immigration and naturalization proceedings and on the paperwork that they file.
Zoran Mamdani.
Well, we're going to get to him probably after the break here in a second, but what's dangerous is saying that it's okay to go back to the 7th century and that the United States system and the Constitution is not worth protecting and is not worth preserving for the next generation. That is what I believe is dangerous. So when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about the implications of this proclamation to Zoran Mamdani in New York.
What if I told you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
And we're back from the break talking about the Muslim Brotherhood being, I like to say, diagnosed as a terrorist organization in Texas. But talking about the implications of that and how it now needs to become something we do nationally as a nation. I think that would be the biggest, most wonderful next step we could take. But that brings me to Zoran Mamdani and what we have just done in New York City as a nation, electing someone who is not only a practicing Muslim, but ran under the Democratic Socialist Party. Now, I don't know if anybody knows about countries that were once not socialist and then elected a socialist leader and how that went for them. We can look at Venezuela, we can look at Cuba, we can look at Poland, what happened after they became no longer socialist and then went to a democracy and see how they thrived after that. We could look at North Korea. You know, we could look at all these nations, and I think that people keep trying to reinvent the same wheel, thinking that it's going to change, and it's not. It just sucks. It sucks. It's a bad strategy. We should stop trying it. That's why America exists, so we can stop trying that wheel. And, you know, just because they're selling t-shirts that say hot girls vote for Zoran Mamdani doesn't mean it's true, right? It just doesn't mean it's true.
So, first of all, Zoran Mamdani is not just...
He wasn't even born in the U.S. Sorry.
He's just he's also a 12er Jafari school Shia Muslim. The 12er Jafari school believes in some fairly startling things for the last times. That they need to create chaos to usher in the 12th Imam and to usher in the end of the world. So there is an eschatology there that is fairly startling. The second thing is, and people will, people try to attack Christians regarding this, and I don't know anyone that believes that Christians are the ones that have to do a certain amount of things to usher in the coming of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ says that only the Father knows the day or the hour. So I just want to be really clear on that. Number two, with Mamdani, he is also a socialist. He's a member of the Democrat Socialists of America. And so you have what is called the red-green axis. Now, General Mihai Pachipa in his book Disinformation talked about this, that the KGB had sent 4,000 KGB agents into the Muslim world to create a buffer against the United States in the 1960s. And so the point is with that, by 1970, this infiltration in the Muslim world resulted in things like the creation of Hamas. Yasser Arafat, who started the PLO, was a KGB agent. Mahmoud Abbas, who was trained by the KGB. Ayman al-Zawahiri, this number 2 at Al-Qaeda, and then eventually the number 1, trained by the KGB. In fact, within 3 years of some of these people being trained by the KGB in Balashik outside of Moscow, hijacking started on airlines all over the world. That wasn't a coincidence. They were trained to do this, and it was trained to sow and create chaos. So Zoran Mamdani is an agent of chaos as part of these two movements coming together, working seamlessly now at the ground level.
Yeah, I think it's really terrifying. I think he's making a lot of promises in his campaign that he actually just doesn't have the authority to promise, which I find very interesting. He's making a lot of promises, a lot of free things, a lot of free money. And in all honesty, like, his first thing that he wants to do is take away buildings and land from landlords. He wants to freeze rent. He wants to have people stop paying rent. And that's actually just so blatantly straight out of the Communist Manifesto that I am completely shocked that people are not making that connection. And if they are, they're ignoring it, or they don't care, or they support it. And I think people who voted him in 20 years, when Sharia law is what you have to live by in New York City, and you're terrified to go walk to the grocery store, or your daughter can't use the bathroom because there's an Arab man in there.
Well, it already happened in New York, actually. It's interesting you say that. A woman actually just did this. She walked without a burqa, without hijab, without any of that stuff. She walked down the streets of New York. It was for a long time, like 5 miles or something. It was a long way.
Mm-hmm.
She was getting cat calls, everything when she wasn't wearing that. When she dressed in a burqa and walked down the street, nothing. That tells me that Sharia law is already being enforced in New York City because of the way that she was treated as she walked. Now,
Wow.
in Houston, there was another example of Sharia law coming to bear in Houston and in other parts of the country where law enforcement was saying, hey, nobody ever calls us from this community. And the reason they don't call law enforcement from that community is because they're already adjudicating Sharia law in that community.
That's awful. And I just saw something on X that Raymond Ibrahim posted saying that a Muslim man, I'm trying to find it right now, a Muslim man said to the British girl right before he raped her that a woman should submit to a man and do whatever he wants, and then he raped her. Yeah, here it is. It says, you as a woman should abide by what a man wants before raping her. And that happened in Britain. And Islam really just sees white women for sex.
Well, this is the
That's
issue.
the concern.
Yeah. This is the issue. And where is all of that? Where did they get that? Where did they get the idea that women can just be used for sex, and if they don't wear a burqa that they can be raped? Where did they get that? Where did they get this idea behind temporary marriage, like for 15 minutes, so they could do whatever they want to with a woman and then divorce her? Where did they get the idea of sex slavery, which we saw in Syria?
What happens to the woman after he divorces her?
Exactly. She's humiliated. What about all of these interviews with these men that were involved in ISIS that raped Yazidi women in Syria and in Iraq? What about all these interviews where they said they were doing the will of God? And afterwards, after they had raped her, she was crying in front of them. And yes, it broke her heart. And yes, it broke their heart, but they still did it because it brought them closer to God.
Well,
these are their words.
That's such a twisted idea. And how could that be anything other than demonic?
Well, I mean, you have to ask yourself, why are people apologizing for Sharia law, cheering it when Mamdani won?
Why are people voting for this? That's my confusion. And what's interesting to me is I'm realizing
like it's rage.
Everybody on each side of the spectrum politically thinks that they're correct, right?
Of course.
So people on the Democratic side, people on the Republican side, we both think that we're correct. We both think that we want what's best for America, and we both think that we have the best way to usher in the best America, right? But in my mind, when I'm looking at both sides, one side, the left, wants to completely dismantle everything that this country was built on.
Of course.
The right, if we go into the extremes, wants to do not great things either. But if we're looking at just the regular people, we want to preserve what this country was built on. We want to preserve the fact that this country was built on constitutional rights given by God and not by man. And we want to preserve that. We want to preserve the sanctity of life, the sanctity of marriage, the sanctity of the family. And it's just weird to me that we can't see the insanity that's being bred on the left. And we're voting this in. We're literally voting for our own demise. We're voting for in God's judgment on this nation.
Look, Hitler was a National Socialist. So guys like Nick Fuentes and guys like Tucker Carlson, they're a distraction right now.
Nick Fuentes I just saw something where he literally told his followers not to read the Bible.
Okay,
he says he's a Christian.
These are easy discernment points for any Christian. So let's shift to the other side now. What is it distracting from? It's distracting from the real threats to this country. The communists said their goal, their main target, has always been the United States of America. You had Yuri Bezmenov come out. You had Anatoly Golitsyn come out. You had Stanislav Lunev come out, and many others defected from the Soviet Union and said the main target has always been the United States of America. And the even bigger target than that has always been Christianity. So the jihadis in this world, their main target has always been Christianity and has always been the United States of America. And so people that have this discussions surrounding this, do we not see it in very simple terms? The idea of socialism is to deconstruct the system. The idea of communism is to deconstruct the existing system and to take it over. In fact, all it really is at its core is sophisticated gangsterism. When we come back from the break, more on the threats to the United States of America, this proclamation out of Texas, Zoran Mamdani, and hopefully we get to talk about what you can do about it.
What if I told you you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
Welcome back. I know you missed us. That 30 seconds was the longest 30 seconds of your life. I understand, but we're back. Don't worry. We are back with the questions from immigration paperwork. So now we can all be aware of the questions that they ask when you immigrate to the United States. And then we can see where clearly some people, Zoran Mamdani, lied when he immigrated to his country because he was actually born in Uganda, raised between the United States and India, and actually is a practicing Muslim, and how that's actually dangerous for the United States since some people don't get that.
Well, we don't know for sure if he lied, but there's some questions we should probably ask.
Well, because they can lie when they're in a state of war, right? Which is
right. He wouldn't consider himself. Yeah, exactly. He would be practicing taqiyya. All right, but this is my point.
Okay, let's go on.
Remember, in the world at war.
Sorry, I'm making assumptions. That's not factual. That was me joking and making assumptions.
But we need to ask the question because Zoran Mamdani became a naturalized U.S. citizen. So I've got the naturalization form right here, the questions on the form. So there are some questions here that would raise issues. The Democrat Socialists of America, the DSA, has been closely affiliated with the Communist Party USA and other communist and Marxist organizations. Many claim adherence to Marxism and Leninism. Have you ever been a member of or in any way associated, either directly or indirectly, here's the key part, with the Communist Party, any totalitarian party, a terrorist organization?
Totalitarian party, wouldn't you consider Islam that?
You could make an argument, yes, that in fact that might be it.
So it is still illegal. Communism is still illegal in these states, in these here parts of the United States of America?
Shouldn't be.
Is it illegal?
What, communism?
Didn't it used to be illegal?
It's been on the books for a long time.
Didn't they used to arrest people?
It was a subversive organization, yes. And yes, they did try people.
I've seen Oppenheimer. Yes, they arrested people.
They arrested people and tried people. Yeah, absolutely. And the next question is, have you ever advocated, either directly or indirectly, the overthrow of any government by force or violence? Islam advocates for the overthrow of any government that is non-Muslim by force or violence. This is what the Reliance of the Traveler says. You can go read their books. That's what it means when it says violence against non-Muslims.
Right there. That is a reason for Muslims to not immigrate to the United States of America. Correct?
Well, this would raise questions.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Are you adhering to Sharia law? Right. And then you have the issue of, well, are you lying to me now because this is part of the world at war in your belief system?
The question is being raised, is Islam compatible with the West in any way, shape, or form?
It can't be compatible with the West in any way, shape, or form.
Because you can't even immigrate legally because we can't trust if you're lying or not.
Well, and you're seeking, if you are Sharia adherent, you are seeking to overthrow the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of whatever country you go to in the West.
I've seen the interviews of them interviewing Muslim immigrants on the streets of Britain and other countries, and they say, would you like Sharia to be here? Even in New York, I've seen the interviews. They said, yeah, I'd like Sharia to be here, but I don't want to leave this country, and I don't want to go back to my country that's ruled by Sharia law.
So here's the next piece. Have you ever persecuted, either directly or indirectly, any person, again, directly or indirectly, any person because of race, religion, national origin, membership in a particular social group, or political opinion? Islam has the jizya tax, which means if you're Christian, you have to pay the tax or you will be killed or thrown out of the society. In other words, the very system itself persecutes Christians. And by the way, if you evangelize in a Muslim country, according to the Hudud, which are the official criminal penalties of Islam, the penalty for creating mischief in the land, which we would call evangelizing as Christians, is crucifixion or beheading.
Oh. Okay.
So I've got some questions about whether Zoran Mamdani, what he put in his immigration naturalization paperwork regarding those questions.
I am very concerned for New York City. I know I don't live there. I think I've visited there like twice, maybe thrice. It's a very large city, very compact with people.
Did you say thrice?
Thrice, maybe. I've maybe been there thrice. And, you know, I just see all of these hugely populated areas being targeted. Texas, New York, California.
Weird. So weird.
Maybe Washington State next. You know what's key in all of these states? Coastal, border states, states that a lot of people immigrate to, and they are densely populated.
Yep, hub states. Yep, that's exactly right.
So why would they go for those states?
Because that's part of a strategic plan by the Muslim Brotherhood to overthrow the United States of America.
Oh.
Ask me how we know that.
How do we know that?
Because in the Holy Land Foundation trial,
Oh, full circle.
they actually introduced into evidence some of the documents that were acquired when a guy's house was raided. He was filmed with his wife, filming the superstructure of a bridge outside of Baltimore. And when his house was raided, they found the archives of the Muslim Brotherhood. So they introduced those into evidence. And you can actually read their plan, which we will do here in just a little bit. But I think that the first part of it is the Muslim Brotherhood's stated goal is to overthrow the West by its own hands through civilization jihad or hijrah. That is what we would know as immigration.
So it's so interesting to me. We're making this about sides right now. I'm seeing we're making this about left, we're making this about right, we're making this about communism, socialism, fascism. It's all these huge words, these big ideas, when really, if we break it down, what are we worried about? We are worried about the sanctity of the United States of America. Both sides are. So this isn't necessarily about left or right. This is about the safety and integrity of our country.
It is. It should
So
be.
why can't we put certain things aside, use our brains a little bit, and read and research about these things? And we have this whole mentality and idea as a generation that we need to love and accept and just love people to death. We're literally loving people into hell.
That is correct. And I think that's where a lot of Christians have failed. They have thought that enablement is actually love when it's actually not love, it's hate.
It's interesting because I don't know if you've heard about Nisa Powers recently. He is someone who has detransitioned, was living as a transgender woman for 10 plus years. And he was playing pickleball, and two guys came up to him and shared with him the gospel. It was the first time he'd ever heard the gospel in his life, a year ago.
That's crazy.
And
to
no
me.
Christians, while he was living as a woman, for 10, 15 years was living as a woman, heard the gospel last year, took one time, and he converted to Christianity. And it's so interesting to me how we're not evangelizing the people that need to be evangelized because we're afraid of being labeled as something that we're not.
And I've never really been afraid of being labeled. And so
they've done that too a lot.
And so it's interesting. You know, we should stop using Google to do searches because it makes people kind of dumb. Like they don't actually go to the original primary source. So you'll have people like, I remember back in the day, they were like, oh, you were working with an orphanage organization that doesn't even exist. It isn't incorporated. I'm like, what are you talking about? I went and I pulled it up on Open Corporates and I pulled it. It took me like 10 seconds. They're like, well, but Google doesn't say it. I'm like, but Google's wrong. Here is the paperwork.
Yeah.
Right. And so you've got to be really careful about this. Go read the court documents. Here's the court document. I was trying to pull it up while we're talking. This is what this says regarding this civilization jihad process. This is what was introduced into evidence. Here's the court. This is the quote. The process of settlement is a civilization jihadist process with all the word means. the Ikhwan, which is the Muslim Brotherhood, must understand that their work in America is a kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by their hands and the hands of the believers. This is their stated purpose, their stated goal. There was another interesting find. It was called the World Underground Movement Plan, which some people argue over, but gives a pretty good frame of reference for what is actually happening right now. And it was basically a 5-phase plan. The first was discreet and secret establishment of elite leadership in a nation, gradual appearance on the public scene.
And we're talking about Islam.
This is Islam.
This is how we're going to normalize it in this country.
In this country.
After 9/11?
This is before and after 9/11.
Okay.
Escalation utilizing mass media, open public and political confrontation with the government, and seizing power to establish an Islamic nation.
So go to the first one again.
So the first one is discreet and secret establishment of elite leadership. And here's what it actually says. This phase has already been implemented in this country. Speaking of the United States.
That's what the court documents say.
This is what the memorandum summary says. Yes.
Okay, and then what's the next one?
The next one is infiltrating various sectors of the government. And this is still part of the first phase. Infiltrating various sectors of the government, which they have done.
Yeah, in many states.
And in the federal government as well. And then it says establishing a shadow government.
Okay.
And it says parentheses, secret within the government.
Because I think a lot of people would be, how are they doing this?
In a deep state. Like literally, this is saying they want to create a deep state.
That makes me think, didn't you just tell me that Trump's daughter?
Well, yeah, that's all part of what you can raise some questions about, but here's how they did it. They came into the law enforcement and national security apparatus in the intelligence community of the United States and came in as experts on Islam, when actually, and we know this from several cases, probably the most famous is the Triple Cross, where Al-Amoudi is caught with money ferrying between Al-Qaeda and couriers. He literally is caught with money when he is arrested, and he was one of the chief advisors to U.S. presidents.
So they're literally coming in saying that they are working under the title of expert on Islam, but they're still practicing this.
They're still trying to take it over. In fact, they're using their position to help take over the United States.
What's the second step?
So the second step is the gradual appearance on the public scene, which we've also seen happen.
How would they do that?
This would be through the media, normalizing Islam, bringing up words like Islamophobia to tar and feather anybody that disagrees that Islam, should be in the United States.
Normalizing people wearing hijabs and turbans.
Yeah, in the United States, as far as what we're talking about, we have Sharia adherents trying to overthrow the Constitution. This is what it's talking about. And so you had this already happen. And with the establishment of all these organizations and councils, which were exposed in the Holy Land Foundation trials of 2008, there were hundreds. Okay. Then you have phase 3, which is, this is what it says, prior to conflict and confrontation. So they're literally, again, we're talking about violence. So they're waiting
for that.
This is violence, utilizing mass media. And that is what we have also seen in...
How would they be that? Would that be something like TikTok, social media, Facebook?
Everything.
How would they utilize it?
They would utilize mass media to begin the narrative framing and to begin tarring and feathering other people that have calling attention to the Muslim Brotherhood, calling attention to these plans. That's what they use. And then phase 4 is they bring in the political pressure approach. And that really was probably most symbolized by the Squad, where you have communists and jihadis, sympathizers on the same platform at the same time.
Right.
And you're like, why are they
working together?
Why are they working together? This is part of the political pressure approach. They start to put pressure on political leaders, organizations to normalize Islam in those organizations. Then you have, and this is what it says in phase 4. During phase 4, while they're doing the political pressure approach, this is what also they're doing. It's according to their paperwork, quote, training on the use of weapons domestically and overseas in anticipation of 0 hour, end quote.
What would 0 hour be?
0 hour is a military term for the kickoff of a violent confrontation with the existing state or with the existing government. These are their words.
So they're literally
their plan.
prepping for it. This is their plan.
So we know that when we start seeing the political pressure approach, that's the other part that's going on.
But we're already there.
Right. And then the last part is seizing power to establish an Islamic nation. This is from their document, phase 5. So what Al-Qaeda really wants was a 7-phase plan. This was exposed by Der Spiegel Online. Phase 1, the awakening. Phase 2, opening the eyes. Phase 3 is arising and standing up. Phase 4, collapse, which means focusing on collapsing hated Arab governments and then beginning cyber attacks on the U.S. economy. So phase 5, declaring the caliphate. We have not yet seen that happen, but many people believe Recep Erdogan in Turkey will declare the caliphate because he turned the Hagia Sophia from a museum back into a mosque, and that is the only place a caliph can be ordained. Because in 1924, when the caliphate was abolished, the Hagia Sophia was turned into museums, so the caliph never be ordained again.
Wow.
So we saw this happen a couple of years ago, and a lot of people began to raise the alarm. Phase 6 would be total confrontation. That's literally a worldwide war, which is what existed in the 1400s. I mean, this has been a 1400-year war against West. In the 1400s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, there was war worldwide.
Wow.
By the caliphate against
everyone.
The West. I mean, Mel Gibson is going to be coming out with a movie on the Siege of Malta. And that was one of the places. You had the very first war the United States fought against was the Barbary pirates after the Revolution. Again, that was part of the caliphate and the raiding parties and everything that was happening. Phase 7, definitive victory and question, the question mark. The point here is that we are very well along in these plans.
In the United States.
Whether you take this world plan, or you take the Al-Qaeda plan, the World Underground Movement plan, Al-Qaeda plan, okay, all of it points toward the same direction, and we're seeing the manifestation of that, particularly in England with the grooming gangs and some of the other violence that's happened there.
What I find interesting about all of this is a lot of people don't think that this can happen in America. A lot of people don't think that this could possibly be something that would be successful in this nation. However, because if you look at the Middle East, most of the nations over there that are run by Islamic governments, those were the nations where Christianity started.
Yep.
If we take a look at that, that is where Jesus was born. That's where he lived his life. That's where his disciples were born. That's where they lived their life. That's where the gospel first started spreading out and into the nations. It started there. That's where it was founded. And now we look at what's happening in America and we say, oh, what happened there isn't going to happen here. And I'm like, that's where Christianity started. If it can happen there, if we let go of the ground here, it's going to happen.
It is.
It's interesting to me how we can think that, oh, because America's been like this for as long as it has been, that means it's always going to be the same. And we get this almost apathy towards, preserving what America was founded on. And then we don't look at history. We don't look at how history repeats itself. And we're going to be stuck in a very, very bad situation if we don't wake up and realize that, wait a minute, we actually have to do something about this. And a lot of people aren't going to like it because we've had such an apathetic government for so long.
Look at from a Christian perspective, when we come back from the break, let's talk about what happened in Spain in 1492, and let's talk about what some solutions are to this day. And immediately people will say things like Islamophobic and racist. Again, we've shown that Islamophobia is a made-up word, and it is a word that was intentionally used to demonize those who are raising the alarms regarding Sharia law, because this has been going on for 1,400 years. And the second piece of that is that what race is Islam? It's not a race, it's a theopolitical construct. In fact, it's not a religion either, and those aren't my words. Those are the words out of the foremost textbook, What is Islam? Is taught in U.S. schools to this day. It literally says Islam is not a religion. It's a way of life. So you have some very clear conflicts with the core identity of who we are as Americans and what Western civilization is all about. And you're right, the two are not compatible and they never will be. And you know what? Okay, go have your own country with Sharia law. This one belongs to Jesus Christ when we come back from the break.
What if I told you you could convert your 401k or your IRA into gold? While your retirement is being beat up by a volatile stock market and inflation, it could instead be resting safely in physical gold at a place of your own choosing, including your own business. Look, gold has increased 50% in just the last year. Stock market, it's been nothing but a roller coaster. So protect your retirement from market chaos by calling Verity Metals today.
Welcome back from the break. Did you miss us? I missed you. Now we're going to look at Islam from a Christian perspective. Wait, haven't we been doing that the whole time? I forgot where we left off. Pastor Matt, take it away.
No, but we should probably talk about kind of how do you deal with this, right? Because people will say, oh, this is hate. This isn't hate. I'm reading their documents. I mean,
how can it be hateful if we're literally reading what they supposedly believe?
Yeah, Chapter 2 of the Communist Manifesto, abolishing private property, abolishing altruism, morality, and religion, abolishing the family.
My favorite, community women.
Abolishing nations and borders. Okay, that's what it says. I don't believe in that. I don't think anybody should believe in that. I think it's absolutely totalitarian. I think it's anti-Christian, and I think it's intentionally anti-Constitution. So,
it's also depressing.
So I don't believe in that. And do I not have an ability as a free thinker to call that out and say, hey, that's what it says. I don't believe that.
So there's Islamophobia, since that's not a religion, it's a geopolitical construct. What would communismophobia? How would I'm trying to come up with another dumb word that they're going to use.
I'm not afraid of communism or Islam. I'm going to call out the massive destruction, death, deceit that both of those things have sown. And in fact, communism is the deadliest form of government in the history of the world. So you can believe socialism and you can say we're going to do it right this time. The fact is, history proves you wrong, and all of the dead people as a result of it prove you wrong.
I have a very interesting question for you. A comment that we get a lot on our posts on TikTok is Jesus Christ was a socialist because,
oh my goodness.
Because he said, give to the poor. He said, sell all your things, give to the needy, protect the widows and orphans. And a lot of these things are supposedly socialist ideas because, we need to give to the poor people. There's going to be there's going to be one class of people. We all get the same wages.
Okay, fantastic. Let's do that right now. Okay? Fantastic. Jesus said to whom give to the poor?
He said to his disciples and the people that were listening to him.
Fantastic. Did he say that to the Roman government?
No, he did not.
Did he say that to the Jewish government?
No, but he did call them hypocrites for not giving to the poor and for stealing.
Okay, but that wasn't the Jewish government under Herod. That was the Pharisees, the religious people.
Right.
So he was speaking to the church.
Right.
Okay. So he's speaking to each one of us individually. Mm-hmm. Okay, so socialists like, Jesus Christ was a socialist. No, he wasn't. He was not. He said, you are responsible for giving to the poor. He didn't say government was responsible for it. In fact, socialism says the government is responsible for giving to the poor and redistributing all this wealth. Jesus Christ would never force anybody to give. He would never force anybody to give. And yet that's what socialism is predicated on, forcing people to give all of their stuff to the government and then have it redistributed.
Yeah.
Socialism is predicated on force. It is predicated on violence, and it is predicated on envy. When you take something from somebody and say, I know what to do with this better than you do, you are at that point unchristian. In fact, you're anti-Christian. Because Jesus said, I want everybody to be responsible for giving and for stewarding the prosperity that Jesus gives us, whatever form that takes, to steward it well and to use it for his kingdom. One of the ways is to give to the poor.
And I think that you can support that with the parable of the talents.
You can, absolutely.
And he gives a little bit of wealth to each of his servants. He goes away for a while.
Yep.
And you know what he does to the one who didn't do anything with the money that he gave him? He says, "Get away from me, you evil servant."
Look, socialism was tried by the
Tried by
settlers,
so
the
many
first
people.
the first settlers in the United States. It's interesting. The first settlers tried to do socialism. Socialism really is an economic system. It's not a
Right.
government system. I know some people try to argue with that. I don't want to get into that right now, but it really is an economic system because it deals with the means of production and who owns what.
And who gets what, who's distributing what.
Yeah, who owns and who controls, the means of production. So my point here is Jesus Christ was a nationalist because he created nations in Genesis 10 and he judges them in Matthew 25. He by definition is someone who believes in nations.
Right. I mean, the Tower of Babel is another example, right?
Right.
So he scrambled all the languages, and
Yep.
whoever spoke the same language, we all
Sure.
took, and then we created our own societies based on that.
That's right.
Would that not be something that would be in support of a nation? Because wouldn't that be considered you're all going to make your own little nations?
Yeah, well, it's exactly right. In fact, he recognized the importance of nations and didn't abolish it at that time. He actually just made it more decentralized with the languages being split.
And then he said, "Be fruitful and multiply." And
And so with socialism, people saying Jesus is a socialist, he's also not a socialist in this sense too. Socialists want to have control over all private property, and yet Jesus Christ says that we are supposed to tend to our sheep. We're supposed to be fruitful in the land that has been given to us, bear fruit from the land. And yes, there's a spiritual connotation to that, but there's also a physical connotation to that. Jesus Christ also says that he gives wealth to us, and he gives wealth to us to further his kingdom. So there's, again, stewardship of our property and where wealth comes from. So you can't have a government doing that.
right.
And say also that you're a Christian. And I'm going to say one last thing. Jesus Christ says to love your neighbor. You can't love your neighbor if government's doing it for you.
I think that's absolutely true. And what's interesting is when we rely on the government to do what the church should be doing itself, is that we're putting our trust in man. We're putting our trust in one man who's whoever we've decided to run the government to do what we should be doing individually and as a church. And I think another example of how Jesus Christ is not a socialist or a communist is our reward in heaven. If Jesus, who is God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, so 3 in 1, right? And so we all get rewards in heaven. If he was a socialist, if he was a communist, everyone would be getting the same reward in heaven, regardless of the work that they do for him here on earth. But that is not what the Bible says. The Bible says that in heaven, we all get rewards in heaven based on what we do here on earth. Not saying that we have to work for his love or earn our salvation in that way. That's not what I'm saying. That's not what the Bible says. But it does say that we get different rewards based on the work that we do for him here on earth.
So it's interesting if you just kind of sum up all of these things, that communism and socialism are death cults, and that Christianity is a life brotherhood. Literally, the scripture says it's a brotherhood. It is a life brotherhood. And obviously that includes our sisters as well.
Praise God, you get to be the bride, I get to be a son.
Yeah, isn't that weird?
I love it.
Okay.
That is not advocation for gender confusion.
Okay, yeah, you're going to get people, yeah. But simply put, free market systems are Christian systems. Jesus Christ said, "Thou shalt not steal," which implies a property right. He gives us things.
That's true.
He gives us things to glorify him. Everything in our life.
Thou shalt not covet.
Thou shalt not covet.
Someone's going to have more than you.
Yep. So therefore, you must take from them. That is envy, and again,
communism is built on envy.
It is, and it's built on greed, and it's built on the worst possible parts of human nature, as is Islam, built on lust, and it's built on greed. So you can have these discussions, but I find it fascinating. You start talking about this stuff, people want to shut the discussion down. You know what that means? You're wrong if you shut the discussion down like that. And also, if you immediately call out names and those kind of things, instead of defining your terms, The question is, do you really want to know the truth? Because if you want to know the truth, the knowledge of the truth will set you free. But you actually have to understand and you have to accept the truth in your heart. And back in 1492, the Spanish had taken 700 years to fight against the Islamic invasion and finally drive it to a point of defeat in 1492 in Granada. And Christopher Columbus was sent out by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand to find a way into the Islamic Empire to defeat it once and for all. That's the facts. Those are the truth. That's the truth.
The history.
And in 1609, the Spanish were they could not figure out who was lying to them in Turkey and who wasn't, about who was really a Muslim or not, that they deported all of the Moriscos across the sea of the Mediterranean to the Barbary coast. Their progeny became essentially the Barbary pirates we fought our first war against.
Yeah.
So deportation is the Christian answer to a theopolitical construct or a way of life that wants to overthrow the Western civilization and way of life that we hold dear. It is the Christian thing to do. So when I hear people upset about deportation, actually this has been done before, done effectively, and it is actually the peaceful resolution to this.
Yeah, what do you think of people who say that what you're saying, what we're saying is divisive and dangerous when genuinely we're just talking about history and the truth of these things?
I just say this is the
Are they
truth.
weaponizing I believe they're weaponizing language.
They are, and an abuse of language is abuse of power, and that's actually a book that was written.
I've lost friends over these conversations that I've been having with you over the last 6-7 months.
Well, then the question is, were they really friends to begin with, right?
I don't think so. And another discussion I want to have with you possibly on the next episode is identity politics.
Right.
And how we lose people in our lives because of difference of opinion.
Right. I mean, ultimately, we need to decide who we are as Americans and Christians. Is that worth fighting for? And then standing up to it and saying, hey, we appreciate you have that belief, but that is not what we share. And we are not going to allow people in that are going to destroy this country. The Constitution is not a suicide pact. This is Matt Shea and Megan Needham once again here on the Gen Z episode of Patriot Radio. God bless all of you. He is making this generation the greatest one, so keep up the fight.